My fiancé, James, and I have been together for 3 years, planning a wedding for October 2016. A few months before we met, James bought a brand new home in a newer subdivision. We recently refinanced it and added my name. Before me, James dated a woman, Britt, for about 7 months. She's never been to this current house. From what he's told me, they broke up when he decided they weren't as compatible. The breakup was rough, to the point where he and neighbors called the police when she wouldn't leave his front yard and was screaming at 10 p.m. at night. This is all from what he and his sister have told me. I don't have a reason to not believe them. I've only had a few run-ins with Britt. These have been at restaurants or just coincidences out in public. We never spoke up until now. The problem, Britt has bought a house in the same subdivision that we live in. We even share a cul-de-sac. The only reason we found out about this is from a flyer we got welcoming her to the neighborhood. Our subdivision is very community-oriented. James insists he's never told her where he lives and hasn't spoken to her since the night he called the police. We both brushed it off as a coincidence, but lately it's becoming very weird. Here's why. I work for a company that allows me to work from home 3 out of the 5 days. Our home is a ranch and my office window faces the street. I'm not sure what Britt does for a living, but she does not work during the day. From about noon until 3, she spends her time walking up and down our street. When she passes our house, she doesn't take her eyes off of it. It's almost like she can see me in the office. She'll even stop in front of our house and stretch there for about 5 minutes. Every day anyone is at home. It makes me uncomfortable to the point where I have all of our blinds closed during the day. I understand the need for exercise, but she walks for 3 hours just going up and down our street. Another issue is when either James or I are outside with the dog, she'll let her dog outside and it will come sprinting to our yard. This causes her to come and get her dog. Every time she says, "I'm sorry, we're still working on training." James and I are always polite. Normally, I would be okay with this, but James has pointed out that any other time she lets her dog out and we're not outside, she'll immediately correct him before he runs off. She never corrects him when we're outside. We've been getting ding-dong ditched a lot since she's moved in. Something that's never happened in the 4 years that James owned the house. The doorbell will ring around dinner time, between 6 and 8, and by the time anyone gets to the door, no one will be there. It's gotten to the point where our Doberman has picked up the routine and waits by the front door, pacing. The last issue, which I believe might be illegal, is that our mail seems to go missing for a while and then pop back up. What I mean is, Britt will knock on our door and say that she received our mail and is just returning it. This has never happened with the previous owners in her house. We don't have a new mail carrier either. It seems to happen once a week and she'll always bring it on a Friday night. Based on the date on the envelopes, we can tell she's been holding it all week. This has pushed James over the edge because she had our water bill, which resulted in us being 2 days late on the payment. James is neurotic when it comes to paying bills. Every time I have to convince him not to go over and yell at her because we haven't actually caught her taking it out of our mailbox as much as I try to monitor it. She usually gets 2 days worth of mail because those are the days I'm not working from home. The other days I get it right away. I'm not sure what to do at this point. I don't want to piss her off by confronting her, but how can I get her to stop? She's making us nervous and I feel uncomfortable in my own yard most of the time because I know she is watching. I know this sounds strange, but I'm not sure if I can legally do anything about it. I don't have anything against her, it's just becoming an annoyance. So me and my husband, who I'll call Jake for this story, have been together for 5 years and married for 3. We have recently started trying for a baby as we both felt like that was the next step in our life together. And 3 weeks ago I got a positive test back. We were really happy and told our families, and now my mom and mother-in-law want to throw a big baby shower for us. It was just super good news all around. Well, 2 nights ago me and Jake were getting ready for bed when he reminds me to go through the house and make sure all the lights are off. Now he can be a little lazy at times. And it has become a nightly routine for me to make sure all the lights are off that he leaves on before we go to bed. I wasn't feeling very well and asked if he could just do it since he wasn't doing anything and was literally standing by the door. He then tells me, "No, this is what is expected of you every night." I was a little hurt, but I didn't want to fight with him, so I just did it. When I came back, Jake goes on this very long and unprovoked rant saying things like, just because you are pregnant does not mean anything will change, and you are still expected to cook, clean, and do all the chores every day, because how can you be expected to be a mother if you can't handle a little work? He wasn't yelling or anything, he was talking to me quietly like I was 2 inches tall. I was shocked because I had never heard him say anything like this. The rant went on for about 30 minutes before I interjected and asked, well, what do you plan on doing to help me with all of this? He then got extremely defensive, saying he works his ass off at his job to provide for me and what is going to be our future children. For context, I don't work ATM, my job was not paying enough to justify me going, so I am a full-time college student. He ended by saying that it doesn't matter how I feel physically or mentally, it is a mother's job to push through. And if he helped and babied me, I wouldn't be a good mother. I got extremely upset and started yelling, and I said that, I wish I would have known this is how you felt before I got pregnant with your baby. There was a moment of silence before he started crying, and he left for the night to stay at his mother's house. He hasn't been back yet, and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have called me berating me and saying I broke Jake's heart with what I said, and I need to apologize immediately, and until I do he isn't coming home. I don't know how to feel. So for yelling at my husband after he said he isn't helping me with anything during the pregnancy because it's a mother's job to deal with it? Okay. I am getting some things together and am going to be headed to my mom and dad's house. My mom is furious with him and doesn't want me apologizing to him or talking to him without the situation either being recorded or having a witness. 6 years ago, my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife Josie. I have always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, she kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth, because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt rarely ever visited and didn't answer our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was dying lonely. Last night Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he'd focus more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a bastard and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room, saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd just grow up to be a whore like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than him as my son and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted, and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college and Josie was known as a party girl. Before that, Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home. My sister and her husband were sent to prison at the start of this year, and sadly won't be released for a few years. That left me to look after their 15-year-old daughter Amy. I was perfectly happy to do this, but as most of their wealth was seized for being ill-gotten, it's meant that I've been having to care for her out of my own pocket. Once again, this doesn't bother me, but it's meant massive life changes for the kid. Firstly, they sent her to a private school. I can't afford anywhere near those fees, so I had to transfer her to a local school. She was upset at this at first, but she quickly made friends and is excelling academically, so this isn't a huge problem. She's been off school for the last few months anyway due to the situation. A bigger problem is clothing. Like my sister Amy loves fashion and designer stuff. She's still got a lot of stuff that her parents got her, but she's always on the lookout for new clothes. Unfortunately, I can't afford anywhere near the sort of stuff she likes. And I also have 2 children of my own whose clothing I have to pay for. I have told my sister this, but she insists I should make allowances because her daughter is going through a tough time. Amy also really doesn't get along with my daughter Hannah, who is 11. She bullies her, calls her stupid and ugly, tells her none of her friends really like her, etc. She has made her cry on many occasions and often continues to taunt Hannah while she cries. Yesterday I caught Amy trying to buy a dress costing over $1,000 with my card. I was fuming and had a long conversation with her. She cried and sobbed that she just wanted one nice thing. My sister called from the prison, and Amy cried over the phone that she hates here and I treat her unfairly. I spoke to my sister afterwards and she begged me to go easy on her daughter because she's still adjusting. I put food on this kid's plate. I buy her whatever clothes I can afford, even if they aren't to her taste. I take her to visit her parents as much as possible. They're held in different facilities. And I do all of that on top of working and looking after my own children. I told my sister that I was willing to look after her daughter for as long as she needs. But if anything like the card incident happens again, or if she continues to pick on my daughter, there will be serious consequences for her. My sister wanted to argue, but they get limited time on the prison phone. I think what I'm doing is right. I get that the kid is going through a tough time, and I'm doing everything I can to be there for her. But I can't just tolerate bad behavior or bullying, and I can't afford to pay for her expensive clothing. The fact that she's struggling to deal with what happened to her parents doesn't change that.